How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Morning, Annie.
Morning, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Good to see
Excellent.
you.
Okay, so we are waiting for one of the panelists to join, but whilst we wait, we can get started with a few things, and then if he comes in, then we move on with him as well. Okay,
All right.
so the sector of corporate governance is changing and it's changing very quick. With the advent of new technology, new challenges in business management and institutional management, it comes with a lot of issues that members of every corporate organization, in terms of the leadership, have to take into consideration whilst they try to go around these challenges. So this morning, we are here with
I
our
think
three.
Spencer is trying to get on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I
Oh,
think
Spencer, you're on already?
yes, I am on. So can we go on? Can I continue, please? If you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, you can hear me, but I think if you can't hear me.
Okay, Carl, I can only hear you, Carl. I'm not sure that I can hear Spencer.
Oh, wow, that's
Ah,
interesting.
okay. I
Carl
I
can
can
hear
hear
me.
you, Annie, as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe she has to rejoin.
Annie, are you there?
Yes, I
I think.
am.
Oh,
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
that's interesting. Okay, yeah. So can you hear
Perfect.
me now, Ini? Can you hear me now, Ini? She still can't hear me. That's going to be tough. This is supposed to be a conversation, so if she can't hear me, then it means we can't have a conversation. I'm not sure whether it's the internet or the network or something like that. So whilst we wait, Ini, can you hear me now? Hello, Ini, can you hear me?
Hi, Annie. Could you hear
Hello,
Spencer?
Carl. No, I couldn't. I think he's having issues. Okay, I can see him now.
Okay, but can you hear me?
Hello.
You can
Hi,
hear
Uh-huh.
him now?
Spencer.
Yeah,
Yes, I can hear him now.
you can hear me now.
Yes, you can
I
hear
think she's
and we can
frozen.
see you
The
now.
network has frozen again. Wow.
But we can hear you.
Okay, technology and its issues, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so maybe I can start. We can start having a conversation whilst we wait for them to also join us. So this can be.
Yeah.
We are also missing now.
No, well, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, okay,
I think you've just been pinned on the screen, but
okay, on full screen. Okay,
we're
okay,
still around. Yeah. You can go
that's
ahead.
fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So yes, as I was saying, the corporate governance is now becoming very important. It is. It has been important all the time, but now it's becoming more important because of the various issues that comes out of challenges that are coming from external sources. So with technology, with situations like the COVID and all kinds of issues, especially in our case in Africa, we are I would say, now learning to apply corporate governance in, especially in the level of medium to small businesses. At the corporate level, yes, they don't have a problem, but as businesses grow to become large, they need to be able to adopt some of these principles and knowledge in the corporate governance area. And we are hoping that in our conversation today, we'll all learn something that we can work with, and then that will help us to be able to grow big businesses, large corporations, continental organizations in whatever field that we find ourselves in terms of business. So, Ini, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can. I can hear you very well.
Excellent, good. That's good. So now I think that we can have our conversation. So because Ini, you can hear me, I'll give you the opportunity, a few seconds. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and our viewers?
Okay, my name is Ini Abimbola. I live in Lagos, Nigeria. The Vice President of the Sustainability Professionals Institute of Nigeria, an institute that we started as an association, and now we've moved on to become an institute. And right now we are in the process of becoming a chartered institute. For us, it became very important to streamline the practice and the profession, particularly looking at, as you have said, the case of Africa and the need to ensure that C-suite executives and boards and organizations understand the critical nature of not infusing sustainability issues with marketing and public relations as we have most times, because what you see is that sustainability is just a little added to the marketing position or the public relations position. And so for us, it became important that we underscored the importance of sustainability within organizations and how that becomes the bedrock of corporate governance. So that's who I am and that's what I do. And beyond that, I ran my consulting firm for 10 years and stepped down in 2020 for a new CEO. And we work in the area of advisory and consulting for issues on ESG, sustainability, and project management, impact and needs assessment, and all the core areas of governance and management. So that's what I do.
Okay, thank you very much for introducing yourself to us. I can already foresee the areas that you have covered and the expertise you bring to this conversation. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, good. So now I am going to give the opportunity to Mr. Karl. Please mention your surname so that I don't massacre it for you. So please introduce yourself to us.
No, give it a try. No, I'm not going to give this one for you for free. Give it a try.
Wow. Okay, so
Chokotho.
Yeah, good. So
yes, that's close enough. Yeah, no, my name is Karl Chokotho. I run a consultancy firm, business and logistics consultancy. On the business front, one of the things that we look at is issues of talent optimization. But we also look at some of the risk factors. How do you look at business continuity? So on one of our services, we also look at digitization. So that's one of the things. I sit on a number of boards, have sat on a number of boards as well. Malawi is one of the developing countries. So I think this gives somewhat a balance in terms of the other spectrum, what is going on in the developing countries, how far are we going in terms of ECG considerations, and then also learning from others what they've done and possibly what sort of interventions need to be considered going forward. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you so much, Karl, for the opportunity to speak to us and to share your expertise with all of us and then all our viewers and listeners. So to get started with today's session or this particular session, I would want to ask a general question, and then so any of you can pick it up and then we can move on to the other person. So how do you foresee the landscape of corporate governance evolving in the next decade, considering the global trends and emerging challenges. So any of you can pick it up.
All right. From my perspective, I think the issues of the environment and the social fabric will definitely, if one does not want to consider these things in terms of corporate governance, the things will actually force you to. So it's presenting almost a mold, I would say. If you ignore the environment, if you ignore what's going on in the social fabric, you are going to be in problems. You cannot sustain a business without taking those two into consideration. So whether you are an SME, MSME, or a big corporate, one needs to start to consider the issues of the environment and the social fabric. I think quite interesting going through, when we go through issues of talent optimization, we note that we have almost 4 generations right now in the workplace. You've got the generation X, Y, Z, and now we are getting into Alpha. And all these generations have their own what should I say, characteristics, expectations, and things like that. And globally, we will see, yes, we are talking about issues of human rights as very important, but how they see the workplace, whether as employees, but also as customers, is becoming more and more interesting. And just listening to Maria as she presented, these things cannot be ignored anymore. I choose where I go to buy my things. I also choose where I want to work. And so corporate governance, when we're looking at all the risk assessments and things like that, you need to consider the social. For Malawi, for example, talking about the environment, we have had floods. Last year we had Cyclone Freddy, which was one of the most disastrous.
Wow.
And whether we like it or not, when you look at information available from different sources, they point to one thing. The disasters are increasing in frequency, but they're also increasing in intensity. So whether you are an SME or MSME, you cannot ignore that particular aspect. One needs then to go beyond just the issues of profitability, but you also need to look at sustainability. What is it that I am doing to make sure that my business is sustainable, and what ways can I contribute to ensure that sustainability exists? Let me stop there for now.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a lot of input and a lot to unpack. But that's the whole purpose of this conversation. We want to learn as much as possible. And for me, I'm very excited that we have people from different countries in Africa so that we can learn from the examples and the stories of different countries. So, Ini, I'll come to you with this. So considering your expertise in sustainability, how can corporate governance practice evolve to better integrate environmental, social governance principles?
Okay, thank you. I think that, so let me piggyback a bit and say that I like, the first question that you asked and how Karl talked about the issue of risk. I think that that is one core area that is pushing the conversations around, sustainability and ESG and its linkage to corporate governance. So if you look at where we have been in 2023, for instance, in 2023, we saw what I call a maturation of conversations around sustainability, conversations around ESG programs. And initially, we saw a pushback for that in terms of, organizations saying this is just another trend. We are just talking about sustainability and now you're bringing ESG. What does ESG mean? And so, but there was a change and a shift because investors, both local and global investors, were also doubling down on the need and more demands for environmental sustainability reports. So whether we like it or not, whether you're an SME, whether you're a medium-sized organization, a large corporate, that we saw a lot of that. And if you look at even the issues, the conversations that we had in terms of the Alliance Risk Barometer for 2023, the first three core areas of risk, of global risk that we were seeing, were also looking at critical areas that surround business and the business environment. So if we take that and we say that, and bringing it to the conversation around what do we see and what does this hold for the future, I think that we've seen the case where, we've seen a lot of technological and digital advancement in terms of corporate governance issues. And that we're going to see more as this changes, because then we're going to be looking at data governance. Boards need to understand how the data around their sector, on their industry, what that means for governance issues and the metrics that they need to be working with. Where I think that more focus on ESG integration is going to happen, because issues around the environment, we're looking at the issues that have come about in terms of the energy crisis, from the Ukraine war, for instance. We're looking at issues around the violence in Israel and Gaza. All of those things are environmental issues, global environmental issues that are, becoming very integral to corporate governance. And a lot of, companies are beginning to realign and align their governance practices with these key issues, recognizing the importance of what this means for businesses. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ini. So I'll come back to Karl. So in your experience, what are the biggest roadblocks to implementing effective sustainability initiatives within organizations?
Okay, I think I'll start from our end in terms of what I see for the number of boards that I sit on and have sat on. I think it was interesting for me when Maria was presenting to note that in some countries there could be legislation that actually defines a minimum number of committees when it comes to corporate governance. I have not seen that locally, but then you see what Ini is presenting, the fact that there are some other pressures. So if I am going to go outside of this country to look for markets, then I should expect some of the clients over there to ask the question in terms of my ESG metrics and how I'm implementing the ESG considerations. If I don't have that, obviously, then I'm losing out on the global market. Now, our interconnections globally are demanding that, but if locally the people who want to do business are not researching, for example, so if I'm content with just trying out things, but not researching as to what ESG is, the demands globally, what it entails, then I'll not have anything ready and I'll not make it on the global market. Locally, you may survive for some time, but you still need to consider, like we're saying, if I don't do things locally that will sustain my business and the businesses of others, then we are in for a very short run. So these things need to be considered definitely. But if you want to go global, then obviously you need to look at that. The issue that there is no legislation is interesting. If there were legislation, I think it would point corporates and businesses to start thinking about these things. But needless of that fact, I think it should still come in the end for those who really want to grow and to be sustainable. So the external factors will dictate in the end. Come 5-10 years from now, if the graphs that we are seeing from sources on natural disasters about the increase in frequency and intensity are anything to go by, those things will force us in the end to start having this very difficult discussion on what do we do to ensure that all businesses are sustainable. So legislation on the one hand, the absence of it, yes, but the other forces could actually force you to start having those discussions. But in case governments move quickly and start, putting in legislation, minimum number of committees and so on to have on the board, that would also drive, the considerations much faster.
Thank you very much for that. So, Ini, I'll come back to you with this question. So, since we started this conversation, I've heard the ESG. I would want you to help us explain to our listeners what is the ESG and why it's important to corporate governance. Hello, Ini, can you hear me?
Looks like her screen has frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So whilst we wait for her, I'll come back to you with a question, and then she can help us with the other one. So, Karl, yes, in the context of emerging economies, how can corporate governance strategies promote sustainable development and responsible businesses?
Look, emerging economies, I think it's tough. We have all these, but there still needs to be some action, because none of the economies are isolate from each other. We have all these economic blocks that we ascribe to, we are assigned to, we are affiliated to. So the economic blocks basically dictate to us that because business is open to others outside of our own environment, we need to start looking at what is it that is necessary or demanded of by our customers, but also by investors. So in emerging economies, obviously what we want is more FDI, but the direct investors, the foreign direct investors, will always have certain requirements that they want as they invest. And so whether through FDI or through the issues that we've been talking about, emerging economies will have to take all these things into consideration and be much more responsible. Such may not always be the case in certain spheres, but there are, corporates that have progressed and realizing and recognizing the need for sustainability, not just of their business, but for the environment within which they live, so that the business is sustainable. So we're talking about environment, but the same goes to the social aspect. One needs to also consider that. So corporates, whether small or big, some have actually seen the need for getting involved. But like I was saying, I think one of the things that Ini also mentioned was, the tendency for people to say, this is just another trend. What are you guys talking about? The trends come and go, and this one will go. But I think this one is really, really different in the sense that the facts and figures are showing us that when issues of climate change, issues of the environment, issues of the social fabric there is adequate data available for each one of us to show that this is not a trend that is just going to be whisked off and just come and go away. This is something that is here to stay, and therefore we need to sit down and see how it is that we can start, making not just our businesses profitable, but sustainable as a group as well. So it's important to have these discussions. I was president for the Chamber of Commerce at some point, and as chambers of commerce, when you have meetings with businesses, people will raise issues. This thing concerns us, and so on and so forth. And usually, high ranking on those things are government policies and the issues of taxes and so on and so forth. Okay, but then you find that there's very little discussion of, oh no, guys, we are cutting too many trees, or we really don't talk about those issues, labor issues, the demographics and the trajectory that exists, and whether that is sustainable for businesses. Those are, sometimes they come up here and there, but are not frequent. But like I was saying, I think the data that is available currently talks to the fact that these things cannot be ignored and need to be considered.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. So, Ini, are you available now? Can you hear me, Ini? Okay, I think Ini still can't hear me, so we'll continue the conversation. So now we have spoken about sustainability for a while. I would want us to look into technology and innovation as it relates to corporate governance. So we have seen a rise in tech-driven tools for board communication and oversight. So, Karl, how do you see technology shaping the future of corporate governance?
Technology, definitely. When we right now, so we've had meetings. I think COVID taught us a lot about technology and issues of corporate governance and things like that. So, I mean, there are smaller issues when we come to technology and corporate governance, the fact that you can actually meet virtually and so on. But with technology also comes the issue of information. A lot of information, some correct, some incorrect, false information, false data, and things like that. So technology is a it's a good tool, good medium for information. You can get a lot of information out, but you also get a lot of information in. Issues of corporate governance. So when directors come and sit together, you obviously want a lot of data, to make decisions, to make sound decisions. Where do we go from here? What are the risks that we face, and things like that. So technology assists us today to have just about real-time data in certain spheres, which is very, very good. I think technology has helped us in that. But also we know on the other side that some have used the same technology to place risks, not just in terms of information, but also in terms of actual records. So you keep records with technology. You have cybercrime. You've got some threats, and so you also need to start to consider once you start using technology, how do we safeguard data? How do we safeguard information? How do we safeguard the corporate governance details that we have? Yes. So technology is very important, positive and negative. One needs to consider both, but we can move much faster and get known much more through technology. Yes.
Wow. Thank you very much for that. So then my next question is going to be centered on stakeholder engagement. So how can we, as businesses of different levels and sizes, effectively engage with diverse stakeholders in terms of employees, communities, investors in our corporate governance practices?
I think I'd like to agree with what Maria presented earlier.
Okay.
One needs to choose, in terms of the different stakeholders, the type of engagement that you want, and also the level of engagement that you really want. Um, it's not in some cases people like to have face-to-face meetings,
Yeah.
but like we're saying right now, we in the digital space, it is possible to have meetings virtually.
Okay.
Town hall meetings, whether physical or digital, are town hall meetings. That is also a space, that's the way you can reach out to stakeholders.
Okay.
Given that we are global, it's a wonder. I mean, Spencer, right now we're talking face to face like this, but we've never actually physically met.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I mean, it goes for the same for
Yeah.
the board to interact with stakeholders.
Yeah.
It depends on the level. So certain stakeholders need face-to-face meetings. Some will require town
Yeah.
hall meetings. But yeah, one needs to choose. Also knowing the stakeholder,
Yeah.
because it's very, very important. Some people actually get annoyed with the digital space, and
Space. Yeah.
yeah. So but and cultures, I think that is something that should not be ignored.
Yeah.
Certain cultures would prefer actually face-to-face meetings, where you can actually handshake someone after the meeting.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Okay, thank you once again. So then, my next question around the stakeholder engagement, I'm looking at, in your experience, since you have been on a number of boards, can you share with us some successful examples of stakeholder engagement within the context of corporate governance?
Okay. Examples. Okay.
Yes.
No, I'm trying to think of one very good one.
Yeah.
All right. Stakeholders could include employees. So
Yes.
I do recall at some point that we were going through a strategic plan. So we went through strategic planning. And there were going to be changes in terms of structure, changes in terms of the way we do things, and so on and so forth. So as a board, it was felt that it was important to engage not just the employees, but also clients.
Okay.
On the client side, what we ended up doing was actually face-to-face meetings, particularly with the private sector leaders. So
Okay.
in the actual leaders, we had face-to-face meetings because we knew then they could interact with this particular industry sector.
Okay.
When it came to employees, face-to-face, obviously, with the number of employees would take too long,
Right.
and it was not specific to the specific employees, because it was a general thing affecting everybody in the organization. We basically had a town hall meeting. So
Ah,
two directors were chosen so that they could actually make the presentation of the strategic plan, what it meant for the organization, and what it also meant for the specific employees. So again, yes, we used two different approaches on the same issue. It was a
okay.
strategic plan, but because we had feedback from industry leaders, we went to them more on a face-to-face initially. Later, we did have what you call chapter meetings, and things
Okay.
were talked about. But yeah, initially it was face-to-face.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting example there. So then let's move on to some challenges and opportunities in the corporate governance space, and then let's look at what are the biggest obstacles to improving corporate governance in developing economies?
Okay, developing economies. I think one of the challenges that most people have, and I'll talk about Malawi. I know some places, but let me talk about Malawi.
Okay.
We estimate probably around 80% or 85% of the industry players are actually SMEs or MSMEs.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about SMEs and MSMEs, one of the things that is typical of in Africa is that some of them are actually family businesses.
Yeah.
So when you have those issues of corporate governance do not come
Rise.
to the fore.
Yeah.
It's a back burner issue, and I think one of the thoughts that restricts us from getting into corporate governance in those type of businesses is the thought that if I am going to have a corporate governance structure, I will need to pay for that corporate governance structure. So
Okay.
if I'm going to have a board, they will probably need sitting allowances. They'll need director fees and things like that. So sometimes that restricts SMEs and MSMEs from engaging people who could assist to get their business to grow, because the first thought is, oh, I'll need to pay more. But there are, I have sat on a board or two where
Okay.
I'm not paid any fees. It's I looked at what the business was doing, what the organization was doing. They requested me to sit on the board. I looked at the initiative and said, this is a good initiative, and
Yeah.
I didn't need any fees. So I sat there.
Yeah.
If we can move away from just, family business that has no corporate governance structure, I think we would make some headway. But this could be one of the restrictions.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
those who sit on boards, I think one needs to also consider that, how someone put it this way, the strongest person is as strong as his weakest link.
Exactly. Yeah.
If all of us are strong and people have more disposable income, that only helps to sustain our own business.
Yeah.
So helping others to grow is actually a very good thing for your own business. And
Yeah.
so those who are capable, who have sat on boards, let's consider in some cases, depending on the type of businesses, to allow for SMEs and MSMEs to engage with us, and so that we help them grow, and we don't require board director fees and all that kind of thing, because that's part of the thing that is probably killing our move towards corporate governance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ini, we missed you. I think your internet was.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I had to change internet sources. It was really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. I can
So
imagine.
sorry about that.
That's fine. That's fine. So I had a question for you earlier on, and the
Yeah.
question was centered on the ESGs. So since we started the conversation, we've mentioned it a number of times, but it's possible somebody doesn't know what ESG is and how it's connected to corporate governance. So can you explain that to us?
Okay, so ESG is a framework that integrates environmental, social, and governance factors into a company strategy. So what it does is help an organization look at how environmental issues affect the business and how the business is affecting its environment. So it's always an inside in, outside in, and inside out kind of view. And so that's why it's very important understanding, what's going on in the environment, what are the trend issues. So these are that's one critical part of ESG. So the social factor of it looks at the interaction of the business with other businesses, with its employees, with its stakeholders within the communities within which it does business. So if it has local and global investors, then it will be looking at how do the social issues affect how we do business. And that's where your sustainability and your CSR issues come in. And then the governance issue is an internal process that looks at issues around accountability, looks at issues around transparency, looks at issues around the diversity of the board, looks at issues around, compensation, looks at issues around exclusivity, which is what are some of the things that this business will partake in terms of, is this business politically driven, or what are the exclusions that it will have? So these are the core areas. Again, it's a framework that is, the idea around ESG is that it enables investors, whether local or global, and the stakeholders, whether internal or external, to understand how to drive economic vibrancy for the organization, to also achieve long-term sustainability for the business. It is also a risk issue because what ESG does is measure the sustainability risk impacts of the company. It is non-financial, but also looks at the long-term impact, the material impact of the business. So that's what ESG is. And it's a critical part of corporate governance because what it does, it helps the board themselves to evaluate the management of sustainability risk and opportunities and how to strategize around them. And we're seeing a larger focus of that in 2024 because it's no longer a conversation on the side. It is a critical conversation when we look at some of the core business risk that we saw in 2023 and what we are projecting to see in 2024. The economic climate is not necessarily going to get better when we look at issues that are going on around the globe and how that also affects the African market where we operate in. So it becomes a very critical part that ESG needs to be incorporated into the, risk compliance and management of businesses.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. So we are close to the end of our conversation, but there's a key question that I wanted to ask you. So if you can spend 30 seconds to a minute to help us understand this. So how can we promote cross-cultural understanding and collaboration in developing best practices for effective governance in Africa?
Fantastic question. I think that one of the issues that I've had is that as Africans, we're not telling our story. So I went to Harvard, and most of the case studies that we're having are I'm not sure that we have as much African, maybe now, because I went to Harvard a couple of years ago, that we do not have African stories, business stories, that serve as an insight into the vibrancy, the economic vibrancy, the long-term value that businesses in Africa have brought to bear. And I think that we need to begin to tell our stories. And that's where the cross-cultural collaborations will come in. Where, for example, Karl, that has, huge, knowledge around businesses in Malawi or Southern Africa or Eastern Africa, can begin to put the stories together in a case study form. This is something that I am invested in doing, particularly for the West African market, because trust me, we have stories of successful entities that have gone beyond the founders themselves, that are now sustainable businesses, that have grown to the second, third generation and are doing well in spite of the various problems, in spite of the business environment that we may find ourselves in. And so I think that it becomes imperative that we begin to tell our stories, not just to talk about it, but we want to make them into case studies, if you know what I mean, in order that, our schools, and we make sure that schools in Africa begin to use this as case studies for our graduate students, and then it's going to go out. I think that this is one critical area that we need to look into.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. This is a conversation I've had with Dr. Rubin, for instance. So it looks as if this is the right time for us to get back to it. Maybe
Yeah.
we can put a group of people from different countries together and let's start
Mhm.
developing our own case studies, just like
Yeah.
you mentioned. Yeah, so
Yeah.
bringing our conversation to a close, let me ask this final question to both of you. So I'll go to Karl first before I come to Ini. So looking
Yeah.
ahead, what are your key recommendations for individuals and organizations seeking to adapt and thrive in the evolving landscape of corporate governance in Africa?
Okay. I think, thank you, Ini, so much for coming up with that. I think that is highly critical. So going forward, I think we should not be shy as African companies to write our story. In fact, when we go to investors, if we can say, you know, we are in Malawi, we operate in Malawi, we're doing business in Malawi, and we've been doing business for this number of years. That speaks to an investor of you know, something that can actually work. So let's not be shy to tell our story, but we also need to start looking out. For those who haven't been looking out, it's very critical that we start to look out, because we are a global village, and whether we like it or not, we are much more interconnected today than we were before. So
Yes.
there are certain things that we cannot ignore, and regardless of our size, let's move away from just small family businesses. We need to
Yeah.
start to grow to levels where we you know, you can become a small corporate and then a larger corporate. Most of the multinationals that we have globally, if you look at their history,
Yeah.
interestingly, most of them started as family businesses. So
Absolutely.
our thoughts must go beyond just being small.
Yeah.
We must grow bigger. And yes, even global. But once we start going that direction, we must know the demand on us for consideration of ESG and other aspects will be there. And so we need to be ready for that.
Excellent. So yeah, so Ini, the same question to you, your key recommendations for individuals and organizations seeking to adapt and drive and thrive in the evolving landscape of corporate governance.
Okay, so there was an issue that Karl was talking about in terms of the fear that a lot of small businesses have, putting corporate governance structures around their business. I must say that it is very imperative. In fact, as we go into this year, if you as a small business want to grow, if you as a
Yeah.
small business want to position yourself for growth. So even if you're not thinking of growth today, you're thinking of positioning yourself for growth, it becomes
Yeah.
imperative for you to begin to focus on how do I ensure that I have, and you could start with an advisory board of people
Yeah.
who you respect, people who understand the issues. They can be diverse, a diverse group of people. So this is one thing that I would recommend for individuals and businesses. And I think that for the larger, medium-sized and larger businesses, I think that this is the year that we need to move away from greenwashing.
Yeah.
Greenwashing is where you give the indications that you are doing sustainability, whereas you are not. And for a lot of organizations, what I've seen is also regulatory adaptation. So they just stay by what the regulator is asking. They
Yeah.
do all the things
Don't go
regulators are
beyond.
asking for them to do. They tick the boxes. But internally, this is not, trickling down internally, because you cannot give what you don't have. So if
Exactly.
internally your structure has not imbibed the issues around sustainability, you have not looked at your human resource around how can we be reduced attrition, for example, which is a sustainability issue. How do we reduce attrition of staff leaving and replacements and all of that? That's on the HR part. How do we engage our stakeholders? So my recommendation would be, don't fail to address stakeholder expectations, because if you fail to do that, it is going to catch you at some point. There are risk and reputational issues
Yeah.
around not ensuring that you're taking stakeholder considerations into existence. And this includes internal and external stakeholders. I will also say that boards need to focus more on the diversity and of the composition of their board.
Okay.
Now, a lot of organizations will say, oh, our boards are diverse. We have one woman there. This is no longer about tokenism. You cannot
Yeah.
be token. And that's
Yeah.
the truth. Unfortunately, in Africa, we have brought in culture into the boardroom. And this is
Oh,
affecting the growth of businesses in Africa. I have
wow.
enough data to show you that yes, we can't throw away our culture. We are Africans, and there are certain ways that we do things. But if we want to play on the global space, we need to do away with tokenism. I have one woman, so I'm a diverse board. No,
Yeah.
you need to begin to look at. So we've seen data on organizations that have women as their chairpersons, the presidents, the vice presidents that are doing extra well because, again, the data shows that, hey, women pay more attention to some of the things that are far more critical in business. So again, my recommendation, don't pay lip service to it. Don't do tokenism in terms of your board composition. And then the last one will be insufficient adaptation to regulatory, which is I've spoken about.
Okay.
Don't just don't tick the boxes. Try
Yeah.
and do the work internally,
Okay.
because whether you like it or not, these things will come to pinch you later, and you may not be prepared for it when it happens. So those would be my recommendations.
Okay. Wow, that's great. That's great. That's very awesome. Yes. So then, before I have, let's say, a last question before we share our final thoughts, and then maybe some predictions and projections into the future in the space of corporate governance for each of you. But I would want Karl to help me with this, and then we come to Ini again. So, what are some of the most promising opportunities for advancing corporate governance practices in the future as we grow in Africa, as we try to build intercontinental headquartered organizations and institutions? What are some of the most promising opportunities for advancing corporate governance practices in the future?
Well, I think right now, those who can jump on board and position themselves would be taking the most advantage, because
Okay.
people are still grappling with the issues of ESG right now,
Okay.
and grappling with many other issues, and we've got entangled with the things that are happening around the globe. Um, so you're taking the position today, of this is what we're going to do, putting the structures in place, and then filtering it down the whole corporate ladder. um, this is the time. If you start now, it would you'd have a huge advantage. In terms of culture, for Africa, this should be easy. Actually, it's kind of strange in some ways that we are shy from discussing issues of business when we are very, very communal.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so for some reason, when it comes to business, you want to be on your own, but when it comes to anything else, you want to be community.
Yeah.
So we should take advantage, of the time now for
Yeah.
us to set up, put ourselves together, and then go forward. If we can put things in place now and communicate, this is how we have done. Take use of technology and let it out there. Tell our story. This is what we have done, and these are the examples. And I liked what Ini said. Put them in
Yeah.
as case studies that can be studied in university and so on. Those are
Yeah.
the things that will help build us. There's a gentleman in Malawi, very, very interesting.
Okay.
And like I'm saying, issues of case studies, he's doing very, very well.
Oh.
But his start was very small, but he has a huge hotel. He built, over 3 years, a man-made lake.
Wow.
And you can actually sail on this man-made lake. He's got a rice factory and so on and so forth, doing very, very well, and exporting the rice as well. And our rice is nice. Spencer, you need to visit, and Ini, you need
I
to
need
visit
to.
and taste our
Send
rice.
them some
It's
bags.
amazing. I will. It is amazing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the point I'm saying is, I mean, he's a local, and he's built this huge empire.
Wow.
He's got an institution that helps farmers and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But his story is not well told.
Told, yeah.
Because this is something that could talk to an MSME, to an SME, to say, look, you start from here, and you can build it up to this level. So again, issues we need to take the opportunity now while people are grappling with everything else in the world. We've got this opportunity to grasp,
Wow.
so that once it's out there on the web, people can see what Africa has done. People can see what we have done, and that will be the seizure of the opportunities. If we keep quiet, and if we don't do anything, then we have ourselves to blame.
Wow, wow, that's excellent. Yes, I was going to ask Ini to respond to the same question, but I just remembered that there's something very important that I have not mentioned in our conversation so far, so I have to bring it in now. So, Ini, can you help us with how do we use corporate governance to be able to take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area opportunity?
Wow, I think okay,
That one.
maybe Karl has something to say because
Yeah. Karl, if you have something to say, you can say.
No, once we start talking about that, it
It's going
pains
to
me,
go.
because I think part of to a large extent, my career has been logistics and international trade.
Yeah.
And it pains me. So I'll give an example, some real examples. Malawi on the map is right next to Mozambique. Okay. Malawi is an agricultural country.
Yes.
But Mozambique imports their chicken to a large extent from Brazil.
Oh, that's sad.
Okay.
That's very, very sad.
So you look at certain things that Malawi is producing that Zambia needs or Tanzania needs. If you start pulling out data as to where the other countries are importing from, you find they're importing from outside of Africa.
Africa,
And
yeah.
what we are saying when we're talking about the Africa Free Continental Trade Area is let's work together. In fact, it must be deliberate, it must be intentional, that we start to research who are the buyers in Africa, who are the suppliers in Africa. This thought or this mindset that we start to say the best products are non-African. I think we need to stop that.
That's very true. Yeah,
I think for me, I think that because that's why I was laughing and I can understand, what Karl was saying. As much as this is a fantastic idea and can catapult Africa because of the resources that we have, it can change the face of how African countries are perceived across the globe. However, we want to look at, for example, what is ECOWAS doing, what is the EAC doing, what is SADC doing in terms of the complex customs procedures that we have across our borders. We want to look at, the different product standards that this country has, like you said, sharing the same border, but this country has a different one. This country has. We want to look at the bureaucratic red flags, for instance. We want to look at licensing requirements. I am coming from across the next door from you, but your requirements of me and show that you will rather import from a European country than import from me. So until SADC, EAC, ECOWAS sit down, maybe at the level of the African Union,
and have the clear conversations about this issue. I have my doubts how successful the African continental trade, whatever, is going to work. I have my doubt. And this is from me being a businesswoman. This is from me sitting on boards of manufacturing companies. I sit on the board of one of the largest distribution company in Nigeria. And I cannot tell you the struggle that we have. We have seen our profits reduce every single year because of import tariffs, because of course the people whose products we are distributing are importing these products. In Nigeria, we have serious forex issues right now, as it were. So these are clear indications that we are not dealing with the root of the problems. We're just going up there and trying to think that these things aren't going to work until we deal with the issues. Now, if you look at the countries, for instance, that I think it was in 2022 that the Continental Trade Framework gave preferential trade to. So you look at countries like Cameroon, Egypt, Ghana, Kenya, Mauritius, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Tunisia. They identified, I think, about 96 commodities that could be processed from these countries. Now, when you look at where these countries are, align it with what they bring with the other countries that are beside them, then you see that a lot of thought wasn't given into how this was going to work.
Wow.
In terms of logistics. So when you look at even the logistical framework and the cost of the logistics on the on the price of the product at the end of the road to the consumer, it is still a lot of issues. So I don't know where corporate governance comes into play. I think that it is still a public governance issue. It is still a public governance issue and not a corporate governance issue at the level of businesses. And because businesses will align to what is happening in the regulatory and legislative marketplace within the country which they operate. If they are unable to align to what is happening in their country, then playing across borders becomes a problem.
That's very true. I mean, I can hear from your voices and your presentations that this is something you are passionate and greatly worried about.
Exactly. So if you're a distribution company, for instance, and you have played in that field for a long time and you have the belief that you can have your own products, but you begin to think about the forex nightmare, you begin to think about the legislative nightmare, the logistic nightmare, you begin to think about it's a lot. It's a lot.
There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack.
But then Ini and Spencer, I think we should not give up.
Not at all.
There are discussions. There are these discussions that are being had, but we need to put in a little more weight. So our different corporations, the chambers of commerce, need to be more empowered, so that we need to talk about these things, isolate the issues, and to deal with them. Because, I mean, we have talked about all the things that Ini has presented. We have been talking about all those things at a Pan-African level, but but we need to move. Because in some cases, what also happens is after you've had all those discussions and
implementation.
You have 2 or 3 days, you go back to your countries, everything
Everybody
forgets.
So, and then you meet again and you're going through exactly the same issue. So we need to be deliberate. We need to really be deliberate. And we can just see from what other countries are doing. China is very deliberate in what they do.
Absolutely.
The US is really deliberate. The Japanese, the Germans, so whoever it is, the Koreans are very deliberate. They do not do things by accident. Probably is planning 10, 15 years.
Ahead of time,
So no, for us to just wake up one day and think that all these things are going to fall in place, it's not going to happen. It's not
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
happen. So yes, we need to have those discussions, and all these things have actually been documented. All the non-tariff barriers and issues have been documented, but we need to move. We've had discussions about
Upon
passports.
discussions.
We've
Yeah.
talked about even flights. I'm sure for you to
yeah,
come to Malawi,
yeah.
you
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 need to go to
might have
Ethiopia
to
or something.
oh,
Or South
it's even
Africa.
possible. She might even have to go to Europe first before she comes down to Africa.
Karl, you are talking about Malawi. For me to go to Cote d'Ivoire or
Which is
Togo
right.
from
Yes.
Lagos, which is
Just a
honestly
walking distance.
like 30 minutes flight.
Yeah.
You have no idea how we
Yeah.
That's
have
right.
to go. So you're practically going all the way
All
around to
over the
come
world.
back to where you're going, and between Lagos and Togo is a 30 less than 30 minutes flight. So that's where my concern is, that even within West Africa, we have not gotten our acts together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Even in terms of the currencies, these are key issues, because
That's
most
true.
of the people doing trade at that level don't even we've talked about the echo, we've talked about, these are issues that I know at the level of the African Union need to be streamlined, and beyond just signing to be a member of the African Continental Trade Area, to say what are the local legislations and regulations and governance issues that need to be taken into consideration as we have become members of this framework.
That's very, very interesting. I think if we had the opportunity, I mean, we can have this conversation all day, especially on the after issues, because we are from 3 different countries and we have different experiences on our own.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the time is up. But then I'll give you all, so I'll go to Karl first. I give you just a final message. What are your predictions for the future of corporate governance? Give us like 30 seconds on your predictions on corporate governance.
Well, I'm hoping that those who are watching now will start to consider the issues that we have raised here, and that SMEs, MSMEs will rise up, and local companies, corporates, bigger corporates will rise up and start to take all these things into consideration, and then move together. Also to, with governments, we need to start implementing some of these things, because if we don't, the competition, which are the other countries and so on, is going to take first place when we have the opportunity to be there. So where are we going? I'm hoping that we are actually going positive. We are going to the place where we are much more dynamic and ready to take on the challenges that are coming, because they are coming. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Karl. So, Ini,
Yes,
what
I
is your
think
final
that
message?
Yeah, so I was just putting down some of the things. I think that number one would be that board, particularly on corporate governance issues, whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business, a large business, you should understand that it's become very critical that board oversight on ESG issues is a very critical thing. And riding on top of that is what I call board culture of learning. You must understand. So if your board members don't understand what is this trend around ESG, what does sustainability mean, what is risk, what is the risk management function of the board in terms of fortifying the integration of strategy and risk governance. So there has to be continuous learning on the part of the board, so that as these issues are being raised, you're also creating a board of the future, what we call a board of the future, prepping the board as a board that is constantly evolving and understands the issue. The next thing that I wrote here was understanding the need to understand that we are in a very fraught geopolitical environment right now. And so understanding how each politics around, whether it is around your region, whether it is global, how it affects, the politics. Because I think that one of the things that we sometimes don't talk about is how politics affects corporate governance.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that's a conversation for another day, the role that politics plays in corporate governance, and particularly in African countries. These are clear issues that we need to think about, and how that affects policies and regulations in the marketplace. So I think that these areas are things that people need to be able to look at as we go along, and take cognizance of the fact that we live in a very evolving environment in terms of the things that are happening within the marketplace, within this business space, and we're going to see a lot more in terms of economic turmoil in the year, the year that we are in. But again, big organizations that have put some of those things in place will be able to, wiggle through and still be on their feet.
Wow. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed our conversation today. There's a lot I have observed, and I know that our listeners and our viewers have also learned a lot from today. So I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to you all for your exceptional contribution to this discussion. Your perspective have illuminated the path forward for corporate governance and demonstrating the transformative power of thoughtful leadership. So we really would like to thank you all for your time that you have used to join. So as we leave, I would want all of us to remember that the future is not an abstract concept. It is a canvas we collectively paint with our decisions and actions today. So we should know that in our organization institutions, corporate governance plays a very important role. You might not have it now, but we expect that from our conversation today, you'll know the value that it presents so that you can organize your own corporate governance in a way that will help your organization or institution to grow for the betterment of Africa and the world. So thank you all for joining us, and catch you again next time. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.